No, great points. Before we end this, I just want to touch base on food and sleep because there is that association with certain foods that will cause them to feel wound up. Drinking caffeine, eating something with caffeine. Talk to me a little bit about the food and different things you can do to maybe calm yourself, but also what to avoid.
So there is not actually that much research on the relationship between food itself and like food, like do you eat chicken or do you eat a hamburger or chicken nuggets in the case of kids, and sleep. Super heavy meal at the right before bedtime is not a best idea because then your GI system is working overtime and it's really going to cause your body not to be able to settle down. The big thing that you mentioned is caffeine. Without a doubt, we kids and adolescents do not need caffeine. They should be getting enough sleep at night that they don't have caffeine. And when we talk about caffeine, we're thinking about not just the obvious ones like Coke and Pepsi and coffee. We're also thinking about a lot of the bottled iced teas have caffeine in it. Some people think like green tea because it sounds more natural, doesn't have caffeine, but it has a lot of caffeine in it. You really want to look at all those products. Some of the orange sodas have caffeine and some do not. Some root beers do, some do not. I mean, it's sort of shocking. You really need to look at those labels. We don't want them having any caffeine because it really is going to affect sleep. So you want to watch that out for that. Chocolate, there's a lot of word about chocolate. Dark chocolate has much more caffeine than milk chocolate. But if you're having a chocolate chip cookie at bedtime or in the evening or a piece of, brownie as dessert with dinner, honestly, it's not going to have enough caffeine that it's going to affect sleep at all. So you don't have to become rigid about all this stuff. But we don't want kids drinking, root beer. I was at a friend's house and I couldn't believe it. Her 14-year-old who's super anxious and was moving into a brand new bedroom that night, she was drinking root beer at 7:00 at night. I almost lost my mind, but I'm like, not my place. No, my eyes must have gone like saucers, but it's not the thing you want to do. And with an anxious child, we don't want to add more stimulants where they're already worried about things. And, no surprise, she did really poorly that first night in her room. But
My goodness. What about calming mechanisms? That old wives' tale. Is it a wives' tale with warm milk calming you?
anything that you feel is calm
Yeah.
is calming. Let's put it that way. It like L-tryptophan is in milk. You have to drink a huge amount of milk for that L-tryptophan
And they're
to
running
kick
to the
in.
bathroom all night. So
Right. Yes, you don't want that. But anything that is kind of a really nice part of a routine that every night you associate with, kind of warmth and comfort and safety and sleepiness, go for it. Absolutely go for it.
no, this is great. You've given us so many different, thoughts and ideas to talk about, to think about. Any last minute comments about sleep?
Is for parents to realize that it's never too late to make changes. I think a lot of parents think, oh my God, she's already 5, we can't make changes, or she's already 9, or now he's 15, we can't make changes. You can always make changes in sleep. And one of the reasons why I love working in the area of sleep is that sleep improves. Like we can pretty quickly really move that needle on sleep. And if you're getting more sleep and working on the sleep aspect at the same time you're working on the anxiety and all of the work that you do with the selective mutism, it's really going to kind of, raise all boats and really make a difference for families.
No, that's really helpful. But one last thing I thought about before we end this, because I know I'm going to get these questions. What about some of the herbs that people use to help calm their children before they go to bed, even giving them Benadryl, diphenhydramine? I know I'm going to get it. What do you think of a low dose of that, like 12.5 milligrams, of diphenhydramine or different herbs? What are your thoughts?
So Benadryl, diphenhydramine, absolutely not. It has a very long half-life to it. Kids are waking up groggy in the morning. It can lead to sleep terrors because it affects sleep. We are really not. And there was a long time ago, there was a study, I think it was at Hopkins, where they were doing a randomized control trial. And the IRB even stopped it early because it was having no difference in sleep. And you didn't want the side effects from that diphenhydramine. So no to that.
Yep.
Melatonin is the one you're going to hear about.
I know.
So let's just talk about it because it's such the kind of rage. We use melatonin in our clinic and recommend it. The physicians do in very specific situations. We know it works for kids with autism spectrum disorders and kids with really neurodevelopmental disorders. It is really a clock driver. It is not a soporific, which is a fancy word for it makes you sleepy. It really isn't about that. It is about setting your clock. And so, children, for example, with autism spectrum disorders or people with jet lag or shift workers, melatonin is really effective because it keeps your clock on track. For children with anxiety disorders, it's really not that effective. It also has a very short half life. So it's not going to help with that 3 a.m. waking. If it may help a little bit at bedtime, but that's really not where we want to go and what we want to rely on. The other thing is you have no idea what's in those bottles. It's sold over the counter. If it says 3 milligrams, it could be 1, it could be
Yeah,
15, it
exactly.
could be anything. So people think it's natural and it's organic, but what we produce in our body is point 0.3, somewhere between 0.3 and or 0.2. We produce tiny bit about it. When you give 1 milligram or 3 milligrams, or people go up to 10 milligrams, we don't even have enough receptors in our brain. It's a waste. It's not really this dose response where the more you have, the more it works. We really don't like to use it very much. I don't think it's very effective for the reasons why somebody with anxiety issues would be taking it. Much rather than doing, you know what, have some chamomile tea,
I
do
don't
something soothing.
I don't tend to recommend it. I also find that the dreams, the bad dreams I hear about sometimes, I just don't recommend it. I do make sure that they get exercise earlier in the day to help them. That a lot of the kids that start with their exercise routine are more tired, so that's been very beneficial. Like you were talking about the different food, like caffeine. I mean, these are things that are pretty easy to change. And parents are like, oh, wow, I didn't think of that. So I think this is all helpful to them. And I think that you've said so many wonderful things. And I think of everything you said, the thing that stands out the most is the flexibility with every family and the structure, consistency, routine, predictability. And I love, love, love sometimes. I don't like sometimes.
I don't like sometimes, and you feel free, please. The minute you hear that word now, you'll always think of me and be like, oh, sometimes that's the problem.
Yeah, sometimes. No, I think that I think our listeners are going to like that too. And for me, that goes so much along with the treatment and creating these, like for every family that I work with, I write a report, which is this is what you're going to do this month. This is what you're going to do. And they know what their homework is, because what's missing in so many treatment plans is what do I do? I don't know what to do. Like, you've worked with my child. This went great. Now what? I need a plan. What do I do in school? What do I do out and about? What do I do during get togethers? What do I do when I visit my relatives next week? So, planning for all that, they love that sense of control of knowing what, when, where, and how. The parents feel good about it. That projects onto their children. The children feel good about it, whether they're playing games or they're doing goals as older kids. That structure, those charting, the knowing what's happening lowers their anxiety, and it gives them a sense of control, and they make progress. So, with what you've described, is very helpful, and that's why I recommend your book. Sleeping through the night. I love that. I've shared that with many of my families, and I thank you. This has been wonderful, Dr. Mindell,
Great. Thank you. It's been great talking to you. Really enjoyable.
and we're in the same city.
And we're in the same city. Who knew until this morning?